There's a new character, and then there's a character that changes the game. And Cyclops and the Thing in this Marvel Cosmic Invasion DLC fall exactly into the latter category. Because behind the most obvious moves, there are hidden details, interactions that almost no one notices, and mechanics that the game simply doesn't bother to explain. And when you discover them, the way you play with them changes completely. So today, I'm going to show you 10 curiosities that go totally unnoticed about this duo, and that can help you get much more out of these characters. Ever since the base game arrived back in December 2025, practically every character wishlist that people had featured Scott Summers at the top. Entering any forum or comment section about Marvel Cosmic Invasion meant seeing Cyclops pop up again, as if the entire community had a tacit consensus that he simply needed to be there. And you know what's interesting? This didn't feel like a passing hype. It was a real demand from those who felt the roster had an exact spot for him. And this insistence ended up creating a very particular expectation. Cyclops isn't just another hero with cool powers. He carries a classic identity from Marvel-style street brawlers, especially for those who grew up with arcades. So when people asked for him, it wasn't just fan service. It was because there is a specific way Cyclops should behave in this type of game, with those optic blasts that work perfectly in 2D brawling scenarios. Tribute games ended up listening to this in a way that makes it clear they really followed the feedback. Adding Cyclops as one of the highlights of the first DLC isn't just including a popular character, it's directly responding to what the player base had been asking for months. It gives a very good feeling that the studio is keeping an eye on the community and not just following a closed internal script. When you finally pick him up to play, this whole history ends up coloring the experience. You aren't just testing a new hero, you are seeing a character that the community earned through constant requests. And playing with him after that has a touch of collective reward, as if we all participated in some way for him to be there. Cyclops really gives off that too complete character vibe, you know? He isn't just strong in one aspect, he sort of covers everything at once. His speed reminds one of more agile characters like Spider-Man, but without losing impact, which already breaks the expectation that fast characters usually cause less damage. What catches the eye the most is how his projectiles are satisfying to use. It's not just shooting and that's it. It feels like every hit has weight, has presence on the screen. This makes playing with him fun not only for the efficiency, but for the sense of constant control and power during gameplay. Aerial mobility also puts Cyclops on another level. He doesn't stay stuck to the ground like many heavier characters, so you can reposition, escape, and attack from different angles with ease. This greatly increases versatility and makes the character more dynamic, especially in chaotic situations. And of course, the screen-clearing ultimate practically closes the overpowered package. It's that type of ability that completely changes the rhythm of the match and gives a sense of total dominance. It's no surprise that so many reviews point him out as one of the strongest. But the most interesting thing is that he isn't just strong, he is genuinely fun to play. What caught my attention most about Cyclops in this DLC was this distinct aerial control. He isn't just another character who shoots forward or upward, he truly changes how you handle the space on the screen. That diagonal optic blast seems like a small detail, but in practice, it completely transforms the pace of combat, especially when the screen starts filling up with flying enemies. And to be perfectly honest, this type of mechanic is sorely missed in more classic beat-em-ups. Normally, dealing with enemies in the air is a bit stiff or depends on perfect timing. With Cyclops, you feel like you finally have real control of this area. You aren't just reacting, you start to anticipate and dominate the top of the screen, which gives a much more strategic feel to the gameplay. Another interesting thing is how this fits with the character's identity. Cyclops was always about precision and control, and this mechanic translates that perfectly within the game. It's not just power, it's direction, it's positioning. You need to place yourself well to make the most of the diagonal shots, and that makes the character more technical and rewarding. In the end, he ends up standing out a lot precisely because of this. In levels with many flying enemies, it feels like the game was made for him to shine. And for those who like to have more screen control rather than just spamming attacks in the chaos, Cyclops will probably be one of the most satisfying choices in this DLC. The Thing was always that down-to-earth character, focused on heavy hits and grapples, so seeing him with this looser mobility caught me by surprise. This aspect of him making big jumps changes how you see the character within the gameplay quite a bit. He stops being just the slow tank and becomes a threat that literally falls from the sky onto the enemies. And the most interesting part is that this doesn't remove his identity. On the contrary, it reinforces it. These jumps aren't elegant or too fast. They are heavy, impactful, in that way that perfectly matches Ben Grimm. When he hits the ground, you feel the weight of the character as if every impact were going to crush everything around. It's mobility, but still with that characteristic brutality. In practice, this opens up several possibilities in combat. You can reach further enemies, deal better with scattered groups, and even control space better, especially in more chaotic situations. Previously, such characters usually struggle to reposition. But here, the Thing solves that in a simple and very satisfying way. He ends up becoming this flying tank that is fun precisely because it breaks expectations. You go in thinking you'll play in a stiffer way and end up discovering a character much more dynamic than it seemed. And that, to me, is the type of surprise that really makes a DLC worth it. Now that it's possible to test both together, it becomes very clear how they were designed to complement each other. It's not just two random heroes in a package. There's a real logic behind this duo. While one completely dominates the airspace, the other holds the ground with everything he's got. And this natural division of functions transforms the way you face the Annihilation Wave hordes. Cyclops solves that classic headache of every beat-em-up. Flying enemies bothering you while you try to deal with the folks on the ground. With his diagonal blasts and mid-air shots, he simply clears the sky without losing rhythm. You stop feeling like you're being attacked from all sides without a response because now there's someone on the roster who handles this layer of combat. On the ground, the Thing does the opposite with the same brutal efficiency. He is that character you throw in front of the group and simply don't let anyone pass. His grapples lock down the most dangerous enemies, and his brute force serves exactly to contain the waves that come trying to drown you in the middle of the screen. He creates space and time for the team to breathe. Playing with both, whether alone by switching or in co-op, completely changes the sense of control over the level. You no longer react to the chaos, you dominate both floors of the combat at the same time. And against the Annihilation Wave, which throws everything at you at once, this complete coverage of sky and earth ends up being the difference between surviving and being swallowed by the chaos. There's a detail in this DLC that, for me, completely changes the perception of value. Cyclops and the Thing weren't treated as simple extras. They are truly built characters with everything that entails. It's not that type of addition that seems just like a repaint with half a dozen changes. Here you can feel there was real work behind it. The fact that each one has their own skill tree shows this right off the bat. You aren't just playing with a variation of another character, you need to understand how they evolve, which paths are more worthwhile, and how their playstyle develops over the course of progress. This creates a much stronger identity during gameplay. And then come the animations and the voice acting, which make an absurd difference in practice. When everything is done from scratch, the movements are more natural, more unique, and the character gains real personality. It doesn't look like something repurposed. It looks like he was always part of the game from the beginning. This is the kind of care that separates forgettable content from something that actually expands the experience. You don't play just out of curiosity. You play because you want to explore the character, test builds, and see everything he has to offer. That's where the DLC stops being an extra and becomes essential content for those who enjoy the game. This DLC didn't just appear out of nowhere, and that for me makes everything more interesting. The announcement came right at the moment the game hit the 1.5 million player mark, which gives it that celebratory feeling, as if it were a gift directly to the community that helped the game reach that point. And this type of timing makes a difference. It doesn't look like just any launch strategy, but rather a response to the game's success. It's almost as if the developers were saying, "We saw your support, so here is more content." This creates a much stronger connection with those who are already playing. It also changes the way we see the DLC. Instead of seeming like something planned in isolation, it gains more weight within the game's timeline. You understand that it is part of a positive phase of growth, and this naturally increases the expectation on the content. For those who have been following the game from before, this type of milestone makes everything more special. It's not just about new characters arriving, but about being part of an important moment for the game itself, when it hits a huge audience and still delivers something new to maintain that momentum. What I find most interesting in this choice of Cyclops and the Thing is that it doesn't seem random. They aren't there just to increase the roster. There is a direct connection to the game's main conflict. Their presence makes sense within the threat of the Annihilation Wave, which already makes everything more immersive, and when you put this in perspective, it gets even better. The Annihilation Wave is one of the most chaotic events in Cosmic Marvel, so it makes total sense to bring characters who can contribute in different ways in this scenario. Cyclops with his control and precision, and the Thing with brute force end up complementing this type of large-scale war well. This also helps give more weight to their participation. These aren't superficial appearances, they enter as real reinforcements for the Avengers and the Guardians. You feel that they have a role within the story and not just in gameplay, which makes a difference for those who enjoy this more narrative side. And for those who know this arc in the comics, there's that bonus of recognizing the threat and understanding the size of the problem they are facing. This adds another layer of interest because it's not just any villain, it's something that really requires the union of several heroes to try to hold back the chaos. The announcement of this DLC already came with a broader vision of the future, and that changes the way we see the game quite a bit. It's not just isolated content arriving now, but part of a bigger plan that is already underway. Knowing that there is more coming at the end of 2026 gives the feeling that the game still has a lot of momentum ahead. The most interesting part is that they didn't just talk about new characters, but also an unprecedented game mode. This is the type of addition that can really shake up the experience as a whole, not just expand the roster. Depending on what comes, it might even change the way we play or revisit the game after having already done everything. This also shows a certain confidence from Dodemu itself in the project. When the studio already confirms future content with this level of ambition, it suggests that the game is performing well and that there is a solid base of engaged players. It's not something they would do without having this return. For those who like to follow the game in the long term, this ends up being a great incentive. You don't see this DLC as an ending, but as part of a sequence of updates that will still grow quite a bit. And that honestly makes everything more exciting to follow. This curiosity shows how the DLC isn't just adding characters, but respecting the soul of the game. Cyclops and the Thing don't look grafted there just to increase the roster. They were designed to fit perfectly into the classic arcade style that Marvel Cosmic Invasion wants to convey. This care makes a huge difference, because it maintains that authentic beat-em-up feeling that reminds one of old games, but with a modern finish. The voice lines are a detail that, for me, make everything gain more identity. Hearing it's clobberin' time, or to me, my X-Men, isn't just gratuitous fan service. It's the type of thing that connects directly with the character's history and gives more weight to the actions during gameplay. It's almost as if every hit came accompanied by personality, and that makes the experience much more alive. Another point that catches the eye are the fluid animations. In games of this style, the sense of impact and rhythm is essential, and when the movements are well crafted, everything flows better. Combos, transitions, and even the timing of the fights. This helps both those who play casually and those who like to master more advanced mechanics, because the game responds in a clear and satisfying way. And the incentive for tag teaming with characters like Spider-Man and Wolverine is, honestly, one of the coolest ideas here. It doesn't stay just at switching characters. There's a thought-out synergy that encourages you to experiment with different combinations and strategies. This increases replayability a lot and makes the entire roster seem more connected, as if it were really a team fighting together and not just isolated characters in the same game.
It's my way, I was born impatient. And like a damn Freemason, I'll run this nation. They call me a